This is natural for a party out of power. But the mindset of not losing, this is marginal. As Chuck said, Latinos will determine the power of who controls Congress in the 26 elections. Mass deportations, whatever that means, are going to begin at 30, 40 days from now. The interregnum period is going to end. The focus
Whoa. What?
The interregnum. Yeah,
I had an interregnum one time and I had to drink all this stuff, and then I had to go in and they put a scope in my butt. It was during my interregnum.
I think that might have been a different trip you took to some foreign country doing something I ain't going to ask. But let's just set that aside.
You made that shit up. Sorry to interrupt again.
Interregnum is the period between the election and the swearing in.
Oh.
Yeah, Chuck, as he quietly walks away. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's a different interregnum than what you had.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast, coming to you live from the Casa Rocha Studios in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. Mike, are you in a hostage video, or are you somewhere in the south of France?
I'm a little bit mix of both. I'm in West Hollywood, so I guess that's probably the perfect blending of both of those areas. I'm in West LA today on the road. You can see my open closet and the whole. I think I'm in a Holiday Inn Express or something like that. But good to be talking with you, buddy. Lots to cover.
Hollywood, East, West Hollywood. One of them's where all the hookers used to be, right?
Yeah, this is not that.
Not that one. Okay, I've seen it on the TV, and I've seen the Hollywood Strip.
Right.
Yeah. Is that where I'm gonna mess this up, but the really pretty man and the woman with the big lips and that old movie about her, she was a pretty woman. Was that on Hollywood Strip?
Yeah, Beverly Hills Rodeo. Yeah,
Beverly. There we go. Boom. Anyway, we could be here and talk to two 50-year-old dudes living through the 80s movie series with you, but we're going to talk about some real Latino vote stuff today. And for all of you at home, you should know this is the last real deep dive into the Latino vote, because next week, which will be the last episode of the year, me and Mike Madrid are going to bring our 3 bests of the year and our 3 worsts of the year. Now, Mike, I'm still thinking of what we're going to call the award, because I think we should have an award that we give to the worst thing we saw in politics for this cycle. And you can't just say Democrats and the Latino vote. So I'm taking that off the table for you.
All right.
You can't say that because that's too obvious.
All right.
And I thought about maybe calling it the Dunce Award, or at the Harvard or something, they have some kind of award where you get the Puddin' Award or whatever. I'm going to think about what that is. But for those of you listening, what I want to hear from you is I want you to tweet at the Latino Vote this week and kind of give us some ideas of what you think are the worst and the best of the year in politics. Let's say that you can't say that Donald Trump was the best or the worst, or Kamala Harris herself was the best of the worst. Do more thinking than that. Give us some ideas. Was there a great congressional race that outperformed something that shocked you? Was it some other thing that happened? Was it Latino men? All these different hot takes. Give us your best and worst. And next week, I'm going to bring my 3 best and my 3 worst. Mike will do the same, and then we'll go back and forth explaining and defending our choices. What do you think about that, Mike?
I love the idea. In fact, I want people to offer ideas for names of the award too.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, give us your best. Give us the best names of the award. We'll see.
Maybe we mail whoever this is and say, you won the Dunce Award, and we mail it to their house or to their congressional office, and I put Mike's name on it.
I love it. Let's absolutely do that. I'll put Mike's name on it. Thanks. Yeah, I absolutely love it. We'll do that. Give us your recommendations. Give us your thoughts. We'll be bringing our 3 best and our 3 worst. I don't know why we didn't do this earlier. We should
call it. We'll make it the annual Latino Vote Awards or whatever we decide. But again, I love the idea Mike just threw out. If you help us name the award, what should we call the annual best and the annual worst? Because what me and Mike are going to do is I'm going to argue my case for the 3 worst things. He's going to argue his case for his 3 worst things. And I'm going to think of things he don't think of, and then vice versa. And then we'll argue and decide to come up with one thing between the 6 of what is the worst.
A winner.
And then we'll have the winner for the worst and a winner for the best. And then we'll mail it to the recipients.
We need to ask Lalo Alcaraz to do an award for us to draw.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So
Our buddy Lalo.
Lalo, you're listening, Lalo. We're going to be bugging you to help us out here.
And Rick
Lalo
Torres.
show at
Yeah.
one too.
Rick
Yeah,
can
Rick
get it
Bob.
done for us. Rick's my guy.
Yeah.
So this week on the podcast, I want to get into some of the things that folks have been talking about. There's been a lot, of hot takes. Lots of people talking about what happened. Obviously, an underperformance of Latinos in lots of areas. There's some numbers that stood out to me this week, Mike, I want to put out for your thoughts. And there's two in particular. The first is, as we sit here right now, it looks like nationally that Donald Trump's going to get 3 million more votes nationally than he got in 2020. And as we sit here today, it looks like Kamala Harris is going to get about 6 million less votes than Joe Biden did in 2020. And for those of you who listen every week, you know that 2 million of those votes that are underperforming are from one state, which is where Mike is right now, which is California. So I lay that out there of what happened in the election. We set the baseline there of who showed up, who didn't show up. But just so you know, there's a real difference between battleground states where it was a competitive race for those votes and non-battleground states. You should know in a place like Wisconsin, more Democrats voted for Kamala Harris in 24 than voted for Joe Biden in 2020. So you got to take it state by state, and we have an electoral college. So that tells one tale. And then we have all these others where you saw a dramatic underperformance. And think about this, Mike: New Jersey, New York, California, Texas, Florida. I bet that's where most of that 6 million came from. But before I get into the House, give me your reaction on what I just said about where we are today with these 9 million votes.
I think you're right in articulating the fact that there are two different types of American voters, those that are in battleground states and those that are not. That's absolutely right. Those that are in battleground states don't have the benefit of sitting it out. Right. If you're in California, either side, if you don't like either candidate, you can take a pass. I'm not suggesting this. I'm not advising it, blah, blah, blah. All the disclaimers, vote like your life depends on it, blah, blah, blah. But come on, California's not going to go for the Republicans. You don't have that burden like you do, like if you're in Wisconsin or North Carolina or Georgia or Arizona. You got to show up. Right? And by the way, you're getting pounded like from the moment you step out the front door by mailers and online ads targeting you and, roving, smoke messages up in the sky, reminding you who to vote for.
Geofencing.
And I mean, it's brutal being a battleground state voter. But, and this is look, I was just did a postmortem for the Latino caucus in California a couple nights ago.
I forgot you were doing that.
Yeah, we got to have you out here. I think it'd be great.
Did you tell them to hire me? Tell them I'm really smart. Yeah.
They listen. There's a lot of listeners. So that's the reason why I'm bringing this up is I was on a panel with a gentleman who was saying, well, it's low turnout that's what happened. It's not like Trump's getting more votes. And I said, look, man, the only person who says that, by the way, is somebody who's never done a campaign. You can't compare cycle to cycle, turnouts to turnout and say, oh, those are just the same voters that turned out. That's not the way this works. You can look at it and say, wow, vote share was down for this candidate. And that's absolutely what happened. But notice it happened with a party that wasn't terribly popular, right? Joe Biden kind of brought us into this cycle with some of the highest negatives we've seen in recent memory. Kamala Harris has a 100-day campaign to try to make it up. The support for her was tepid. Base people of color, base voters broke against her to a historic degree, and people didn't show up. These are signs of a dissatisfaction with the candidate. There's just no two ways about it. It wasn't a GOTV problem. It wasn't a structural problem. This is people saying, I don't want to vote for her. I don't believe in the Democrats. I'm not voting for them. And that's a big problem that needs to be addressed. And the main part of addressing a problem is acknowledging it's a problem. You and I have talked about this a lot. I think it's very clear now that Democrats have said, okay, because we have to listen to that Mike Madrid guy and acknowledge that there's a problem. There's a problem. And I don't think that anybody disagrees with that anymore. Now the question, which is good, is what do we do about it? They should have gotten there 4-6 years ago, but okay, whatever. It is what it is. The San Francisco Chronicle ran a story saying, "Oh, Trump got the same amount of votes in California as he got 4 years ago. This isn't really a bad sign." It is a bad sign. It's a bad sign when you lose 1.5 million voters. They don't want to show up for you in a race of this consequence, of this magnitude. So I have always been a huge advocate of saying that low voter turnout is a problem. It is a sign that your message does not stick. It is not working. It is not motivating. I think it's a problem. I think it's come home to roost. I'm frankly a little bit pissed off that people are still of the belief that it's just a thing that Latinos do, is they just don't vote. And look, I ranted on this last time. You get me all worked up, Chuck, Rocha. I have one cup of coffee.
Easy.
One cup of coffee, and I'm getting all worked up about this. The idea that Latinos are the only voters that don't show up because we're not connected to or reached out to or communicated with earlier it's horseshit. It's a little offensive. I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. We should do those with all voters. But Black voters don't say that. Asian Pacific Islander voters don't say that. White voters don't say that. Only Latino voters say that. Or Latino groups say that. The problem is the policies aren't connecting with people. It's not the tone. It's not the language. It's not using this word. It's not speaking in Spanish. It's not all these little Christmas tree ornaments we want to decorate and pretend. Don't look at the tree. Don't look at the tree. Look at the ornaments. Mike Madrid's here to say, look at the tree. Your tree's crooked. It's not standing up straight. Your tree's got a problem. And unless you fix the tree, doesn't matter what kind of ornaments you put on it. What do you think, Chuck?
I think that again is probably half right in my opinion. I think that part of it could be the policy, and I think that of a demographic that's coming of age, that has some effect. And I give you credit, and that's why I say the half that I don't agree with is that I think that it's apples and oranges when you compete, which shows the weakness. I'll take this, the weakness of our party, of my party. Because when you can compete for the vote and you still underperform from 4 years ago with a demographic Latino voters in Arizona or in Nevada, and you can look at the difference between Ruben Gallego and other folks, you can see that is that the message? It may be the message. Mike Madrid may be absolutely right. But there's a lot of work goes into telling and having that argument with Democrats in places where there was no argument from us. In Arizona, not Arizona, but in California and New York, we just get our ass whooped. So that means we have a delivery problem. There's nobody out there telling these Latinos or other voters how great the party is or who we are. And when we do focus groups with folks in Arizona or Nevada, when I said, give me 2 words for the Democrats, they would say old and weak because they were thinking about Biden, and they would say strong and crazy for Trump. And they would rather have strong and crazy than old and weak, which leads me to the reason I think that's why people like me on this show more than Chuck, by the way. Probably, yeah. Old and weak against strong and crazy, right? I hope I'm strong and crazy. So the right direction, wrong direction. Yeah. I remember going on CNN 2 weeks before the election, and I said this like for 3 days in a row because it just stuck with me. I was like, Kamala Harris has come back a long way from where Joe Biden's numbers were a month before, because I was tracking the Joe Biden numbers and it was really bad, especially in places like Arizona, where I could see a poll every other week from an inside pollster that was doing it for Rubin. When she gets in the race, she jumps up. She goes from losing 20 points to back to around even. The problem is she never moved from that. There was it was Democrats coming back, but not all of them came back. And I said on TV, and this is my point, is in any race I'd ever worked in before, if it was 65 to 70% wrong direction, it was going to be a bad night for whoever that candidate was. And people really wanted change. And I said on TV, it's amazing that she's even in this race with the upside down on the numbers so bad here. In any other race I was in, and when Mike Madrid said he started drinking a little bit of Kool-Aid at the end, I did too. Because I knew in my heart, we're still at 65, 70% wrong direction. And I should have known from then, and I started saying it, something ain't right, because we shouldn't even be in this thing. And for us to be in this thing, it shows that 1.5 points difference in the battleground states, 1.5 points, y'all, lets him sweep every battleground state. And now I'm going to pivot from this conversation, and we can come back to it because it ties into this next thing I want to ask Mike about. I talk about 1.5% in the presidential election. A lot of that has to do with Latino voters. So we're going to bring it back to the Latino voters as well. And we'll get to the Senate in a minute. But in the House, I saw another amazing number that blew me away yesterday that I want to talk to Mike about, because he's my nerd friend and he's the only one who understands how crazy this is. Let me pull this up on my phone. In the House races, there were like here it is right here. Of the House races, this is how close Democrats were to winning back the House, is that 7,309 votes were the difference in the majority. Let me say that again. 7,309 votes in 3 congressional seats. Those 3 congressional seats, which were some of the closest, were Iowa 1, Colorado 8, and Pennsylvania 7. Out of 148 million votes cast nationwide. And this is from the 10th today. Oh, yeah, from yesterday. So 7,000 votes determines who controls Congress. 7,300. It's really crazy that could happen in showing how this is not a landslide election. And again, this is not Chuck Rocha saying, Democrats, we're the best. We didn't lose. We lost. We lost everything. But how close was it? What's the difference? And then I'm going to bring it back to this, and now I want to talk to Mike about this. So I dug into this a little bit because it really piqued my interest. And what I wanted to look at were the closest House races. Of the ones that were the closest, Democrats won of the marginal seats, almost 70% of those seats, like 65% of those. And then I dug a little deeper, and you nerds stay with me here because I'm going to say some things that's going to make your head explode. But think about this. I want to see how many Democrats, let me back up, how many Republican congressmen are now in a district that Joe Biden won. And it's just 3. And those are Nebraska 2, the little blue dot in Nebraska, North Carolina 17, which is funny. It's the ODCCC's chairman. We lost the seat to a Republican named Mike Lawler, and he retains the seat, same lines pretty much. And then a Pennsylvania suburb district, which is Pennsylvania 1. Those 3 seats were won by Joe Biden, but have a Republican congressman. 3. 2 years ago, there were about 18 of these races that were that way, where Joe Biden had a Republican in his seat, because we underperform. A lot of that's going to have to do with California, and I'll get to that. So 3 seats, Joe Biden wins. There's a Republican congressman. Well, Chuck, how many districts did Trump win where we have a Democratic congressman? Y'all, before the election, there was like 5. Now there's like 12. And let me go through them real quick. Ohio 9, North Carolina 1, Michigan 8, Georgia 3, it looks like. I wrote that down wrong. Maine 2. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, those are the seats that are white majority seats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 more of these. 8 more of these that Trump won that now have a Democratic congressman that have over 20% Latino population. 5 of these are majority Latino seats. 5. California 9, California 13, Nevada 3, New Jersey 9, Passaic, New Mexico 2, New York 3, and Texas 28 and 34 in the Texas Valley. Now, Mike, take it away.
First, let me say I love Chuck becoming more of a data guy. He can tell things are changing in the Latino vote because the Democrats got to sharpen their pencils a little bit more now and start looking at some of these margins. That is some good stuff. Everything Chuck just said. If you want to re-listen to that, listen to it again, because it tells you not just how marginal all of this is. By the way, a 7,300 vote margin is really a 3,500 vote swing. By the way, it's half of that, because what that means is if somebody changes their mind and moves from Republican, you take 1 out of the Republican column and move it to the Democratic column. So 7,300 vote margin is 3,500 voters changing their mind.
Oh, so shit. I see what you're saying. 3,500 people, really.
Yeah. So as small
Oh.
and you articulated it right. That you're exactly right. But what I'm saying is in terms of a campaign, it's half of that. It's even smaller than that. It's just 3,500 people changing their mind changes the balance of Congress. That's how small we're talking about. And the
It's
fact
probably
that
it's probably less than one vote per precinct.
oh, for sure, it's probably one, yeah, for every 3 precincts. Very, very small. So look, this is going to be, we're heading into another very competitive cycle. For those of you that haven't taken a break, try to get a little bit of, relaxation. We'll drink a little eggnog in between Christmas and New Year's and get ready because it's going to start up in January. So a couple of things. The first is we need to write an op-ed on that, Chuck, maybe jointly, on just the margins of those seats and why they're so close.
And the Latino impact in all of them.
Well, that's the only reason people want to listen to us. So that's right. The second is what was my second point? I had a great second point, Chuck.
Okay. And I interrupted you. That's on me.
I know.
We were going to write an op-ed, and then we were going to drink some eggnog, and you were going to sing Christmas carols at the next podcast.
Yeah. Boy, I completely gone.
So what I would ask you about then, Mike, is that the point I wanted to make is that as me and you pontificate about the importance of our vote,
yeah,
and how it's become a truly marginal vote, there's nothing more telling than what I just said.
Right.
There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 marginal seats right there that Trump have that Democrats have to defend now. They have to defend seats that are 50-50. Texas 34 is majority Latino. Texas 28 is majority Latino. California 9 and 13 have a lot of Latinos there in the Valley. And then we didn't even talk about. So those are 8 seats. Think about this. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, let me say this. I want to talk about the approach of both parties. And I want people to just take a deep breath and listen to what I'm about to say, because this is all about the difference of perspective. Right now, what you hear is the left, the Democratic Party, blaming Latinos, right? 1.5%. If we just brought these men in, they're blaming Latinos. You know what Republicans are doing? They're crediting Latinos. And those two frames of reference are going to tell you everything about the change in mindset of how the parties are going to be addressing and entering this next election cycle. It's the same mindset that you go into when you're heading into the fourth quarter of a basketball game or a football game. Are you playing not to lose, or are you playing to win? And the mindset of the Democratic Party is going to have to just change dramatically in terms of stop asking the questions as to why they're losing Latino voters and start getting into the mindset of how do we win Latino voters? Because that's where Republicans are at, is how do we get more? How do we get more? How do we get more? They're excited about it. They're on the offense. They're moving forward. Democrats are kind of hand-wringing, and there's a lot of finger-pointing and blaming going on. This is natural for a party out of power. But the mindset of not losing, this is marginal. As Chuck said, Latinos will determine the power of who controls Congress in the 26 elections. Mass deportations, whatever that means, are going to begin at 30, 40 days from now. The interregnum period is going to end. The focus
Whoa. What?
The
interregnum.
Yeah,
I had an interregnum one time, and I had to drink all this stuff, and then I had to go in and they put a scope in my butt. It was during my interregnum.
I think that might have been a different trip you took to some foreign country doing something I ain't going to ask. But let's just set
interregnum. You made that shit up. Sorry to interrupt again.
Interregnum is the period between the election and the swearing in.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, Chuck says as he quietly walks away. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's a different interregnum than what you had. But the interregnum will end, which is this time of kind of hand-wringing and teeth gnashing and blaming each other. And once these policies and nominees start getting, appointed and confirmed, and policies start taking effect, opposition is going to mount up really quick. So just remember that, and that's going to determine the approach. But there's got to be some sort of proactive, forward-thinking, optimistic, aspirational economic agenda to get these voters back if you're a Democrat. There has to be. And look, I just came out of the field on a poll. Chuck and I were talking about it a little bit before we got on. I did a poll for the business community here in California of Latinos after the election. It's all about affordability. All about affordability. 90%, 90, Chuck, 90 were saying that the price of goods and the cost of living here in the state was an important issue. Very levels, somewhat important, kind of important, very important, blah, blah, blah. But 90%, I've never seen a poll with those kind of numbers. And I bring that up because they're also not saying they're more Republican. There's very little evidence to suggest that Latinos are becoming more Republican. There's a lot suggesting that they're becoming much more populist, economically populist. And the Democrats have kind of a double-edged sword here because they're seeing not only a rightward shift, they're seeing drop in turnout. So some people are like, you know what? I can't stomach voting for Republicans, but I'm not voting for the Democrats anymore. I just ain't going to vote, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. That's a significant problem. That's why that can't be dismissed. The solution becomes challenging the orthodoxy and the recent history of the party, their own party, the same way Donald Trump did in 2016. Doesn't have to be as virulent. There's a word for you. Doesn't have to be as aggressive. Doesn't have to be as acerbic. There's another word for you. But it has to be a clear distinction that we're going to do something different. I've heard you. We're changing behavior. We're going to start advocating primarily for working class folks again. This has been the message that you have been drumming into your party, rightfully so, for the past 30, 45 days as you were being considered for chairman of the DNC. That's the message. That is the whole ballgame for Democrats. You're exactly right. And if they don't bring you in to help drive that message, then shame on them. But that is distinctly different from Republicans winning this vote. Democrats are losing this vote. And that requires a change, from my perspective, a change in policy, but it also requires a change in mindset, is to aspirationally go after these voters and stop denying that you're losing these voters, and then stop blaming people for losing these voters. Go out into the fourth quarter, suit up, put on a new jersey, take the field, and start playing the best ball that you can, because the stakes are too damn high, and it's going to be in these districts that we were just talking about. So I know it started a little bit off topic there, Chuck, but I got a little paralysis in the brain there that kind of came back. That's the message I wanted to convey. But I know you were talking about some of those districts. Did you want to go back to that?
Yep. And so I think that's important, that what you said. Like a big part of this, the Democrats miss, is the messaging piece that you're talking about. And I just met with some folks this morning saying, look, you got to start talking about it so people know you care about it. I know that this policy and that policy, but folks don't think we care. Folks don't think Democrats, they don't equate that with somebody. Sometimes they'll say they're fighting for us, but they don't understand what that means. Like they want somebody who's really out there doing it. Going back to these congressional seats, because it's really, from memory, without looking at any social media, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there was 8 races I just talked about that are Democratic congressmen who are in Donald Trump seats. Crazy, right? That are Latino heavy. Mike, just off the top of my head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I come up with 10 more that are marginal seats where Latinos are. To go with those, there's going to be 20 congressional seats where Latinos will make the difference. The other ones I just jotted down are Colorado 8, California 22. Let us not forget California 22. Right. California 40 down in Orange County. It's an R+3, but there's an amazing Korean woman going to run down there. Florida 13, I mean. And then Arizona 1 and 6, that barely lost by less than 2,000 votes in each one of those. Ruben Gallego almost single-handedly brought both of those over. In Arizona 6, in Tucson, it was less than 1,000 votes, I think, if not 1,500. So all that to be said, I've never in my lifetime seen a congressional map where there were 20 Latino districts. Now, this is mainly because of Trump's overperformance and our folks not showing up in these seats that's made them even more competitive, right? So Texas 34 and Texas 28, the Vicente Gonzalez seat and the Henry Cuellar seats before this election were Biden double-digit districts. Yeah. Biden by double districts. Yeah. Double digits.
Yeah.
And Trump won both of them. Can I say that again? Trump won both of them. That's more than an 11-point swing in those CDs for president. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, guys, it's real. This is why we started this podcast, to have this discussion, get people focused on it. And by the way, it's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a book on it.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't think it's done. There could be, look, here's the thing that no one's talking about, except for Mike Madrid. There was an 8-point shift in 2020. This 8-point shift in 2024 is on top of the 8-point shift in 2020. It's happening. It's real. There's a 5-alarm fire going off. And here's the other part. This is really fascinating too. California, the most Latino state in the union, has been an outlier. It has been behind the times. This shift started everywhere else 8 to 10 years ago. It's just starting to hit California since the 2022 midterms. When Mike Madrid was saying there's a problem here, that's exactly what happened in 2024. We saw it big time in the Imperial County, the most Hispanic county in California, down on the border in the deep southeastern part of the state. Republicans started winning, unseating Democrats for the first time in half a century in a strongly Democrat registration along the border. But also the biggest shifts, the biggest as a percentage because there's so many Latinos there. The biggest shifts rightward happened in the urban core of Latino Los Angeles County. The more Latinos there are in every county, the bigger the rightward shift is a percentage. You can't just, yeah.
Is that because more people voted for Donald Trump, but was the turnout that we keep talking about that was 1.8 million less, was it more even dramatic, less turnout in those areas?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want you, that is a fantastic question. Is that a function of more Trump support or is it a function of lower turnout?
Right.
It's a good question for nerds like us to understand, people that listen to this podcast to understand. But either way, right, the outcome is the same.
Yep.
And when you have low turnout, that is a worse problem than vote switching. This is what I was telling the Latino caucus, and this is what I'm trying to ring the bell on, is to help people understand. If they just vote switched, you've got an engaged person who's paying attention that you can get back. When you have somebody that just says, I'm done, I'm walking away, imagine it like a relationship. You've been with somebody for 30 years and you're telling them over and over again, I'm with you. I understand you. I feel you. We're right there in simpatico. I get your needs. I'm going to take care of your needs. And after decades, nothing gets better and nothing changes. When somebody just checks out and says, I'm out, I'm done, that's a big problem. That's the best way to understand what's happening. Like I said, this is not a pro-Republican movement at this point. It can be, but at this point, there's no evidence suggesting that. There is a lot of evidence suggesting they're just hitting the exit. And that's where Democrats really have to double down and drive home this more aspirational working class message based on affordability. It all comes down to the cost. There's been a lot of people ridiculing people, Latinos. Oh, yeah, but the cost of eggs, you're willing to give up democracy for the cost of eggs or the price of gas. You know what? Screw you. How many of you people have ever been blue collar, less than paycheck to paycheck, barely making it? When you're paying over 50, 60% of your income for rent or a mortgage, you damn straight you know what the price of eggs are. You damn straight you know what the price of gas is. Because the smaller and shrinking share of those dollars that you have to go further and further and further. And at some point, your economic condition is so challenging that democracy or authoritarianism, when you don't even know what the hell that means, when it's all just a bunch of politicians, chachalacas we call them down in Mexico, are just fighting between one another, making a bunch of noise. One's calling one a dictator, the other one's calling the other a communist. At a certain point, none of this matters, because what matters is being able to get enough gas in your tank to get to work across town. That's what's going on. And until that's remedied, you're not going to see a change in our politics. So I wrote an op-ed piece in the LA Times yesterday stirred up a little controversy. I know that's a little bit shocking to you, Chuck. Made a little bit of noise because I declared pretty clearly the end of the era of Proposition 187. Proposition 187 is over. Get this statistic. A week before the election, 63% of Latinos in California, 63% said that the undocumented were a burden. 63% of California Latinos said the undocumented were a burden. In 1994, during Prop 187, 63% of white voters voted for Prop 187, the exact same number 30 years later. Latino voters have changed. They have changed. It doesn't make us anti-immigrant. What they're saying is there's got to be border security. There's got to be a pathway. No more handouts for the undocumented, especially when I'm getting killed by the price of gas, the price of groceries, the devaluation of my money with inflation, and nobody working for the middle class. That's where we're at. That's what has to change. The opening is there for both parties. I'm fascinated to see who in this next year takes that opening. They both know it's there. They both don't know how to do it. Whoever figures it out the fastest is the party that's going to be dominant through the midterms, and I would argue for the rest of the decade.
We'll see. I think that has some good basis in it. I think that as we move into the midterms and we look back at what happened in this election, I just did some research on what was the vote difference in the House in 2020, 4 years ago, and it was 35,000 votes. So there's definitely something different happening here. But the bottom line is there's going to be a ton of Latino seats with lots of Latino voters. They may not be Latino candidates, but there's things that are happening where you can take that on. Not the opposite of what Mike says, because there are different Latino voters in different districts compared to the Central Valley, but Latinos eke out wins in places like California 27. They protect in California 45 and 47. We barely win in California 13 again, showing that, to Mike's point, this ain't some run to the Republican Party. You can salvage it if you go in and run a long-term operation but we should be killing folks in these seats. And let me talk about the Senate seats. Now that we've gotten through this Senate map, and you're like, well, it was the worst Senate map for Democrats ever in 2024. And that's true. Well, you should buckle in, because the map for 2026 in the U.S. Senate does not look that much better for Democrats. And what I mean by that is Republicans right now have a 3-seat majority in the U.S. Senate. Democrats would have to win 3 or flip 3 seats in the next cycle to just be even. And there's not any seats to really do that in unless something crazy happens. So for those of you at home, let me go through a couple of these Senate races of who are up in 2 years to give you an idea where our focus is going to be. The first few I'm going to mention are all Democratic seats. So think about having to defend a Democrat in these seats. The most marginal of which I would say is Georgia. Georgia's got 1 million Latinos. It's an off-year election in Georgia. I forgot what Donald Trump won by, but it was a pretty good margin there. And we have to defend Georgia and David and John Ossoff in 26. Other defends are New Mexico. We have a Senate seat there that's probably going to be maybe open. But if not, there's going to be a Senate race not only in New Mexico, but also in Colorado. Now, those of you at home would be like, Chuck, New Mexico and Colorado are Democratic seats. Well, they damn sure used to be, but things are changing to where I don't know how Democratic these seats are, but we have to defend New Mexico and Colorado. We also have to defend, get this, Virginia and Michigan, both Democrats. We have to defend those. And we also have to defend a Democrat in New Hampshire, for God's sakes. Now, those are the major and the most marginal Democratic seats. Now, there's an Oregon Democratic seat up. I don't really count that as marginal. I think we're pretty safe in Georgia. I mean, in Oregon. Same thing with Illinois and in Minnesota. All Democratic seats, those should be okay. The Minnesota and Illinois seats. Well, Chuck, tell me where we could pick up and flip those 3 seats so that we could get back to even. Keep in mind, we'd have to win all of the Democratic seats, including Georgia, all the Democratic seats. But the places where you could flip a seat starts with our good friend Susan Collins in Maine. Maybe, probably not. But the real question, Mike, is does she run again? If she don't run again, I think that Democrats could pick up that seat if she don't run again. The other place you could pick up a seat is in North Carolina. North Carolina has a Republican up this next cycle. That crazy woman, Mace, is trying to run in South Carolina. They're up as well, but I don't think you're going to be flipping North Carolina or South Carolina in and off here, but they're both up. And then the other one that's up, Mike, is Alaska. Again, she's a stalwart. It's going to be hard to beat a Republican in Alaska. We lost the congressional race in Alaska. I think they voted out ranked choice voting, so you can forget about that. So the Senate map is just not looking very good for Democrats. There's a lot of governor's races up that we can talk about on the next podcast, but I think we'll start next year talking about those. But there's a ton of governor's races in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, but all Democrats, right? So it's going to be a very interesting year. And when you think about the Latino vote, Latinos will be huge in these Senate races in North Carolina, huge in Georgia, huge in New Mexico, huge in Colorado. So this is all setting up to be the same thing we keep talking about, which is our voters, our community, having an over-index say in who's going to control all these different factions of the government, but mainly in the House of Representatives, where there are 20 seats that are marginal that Democrats are either going to have to defend or try to flip. Mike?
Look, this is phenomenal. This is really, really good stuff. Well, you know what I'm really excited about as I'm listening to all of this is how different and unique the approaches are going to have to be in every one of these places.
Yep.
We're going to have some great guests on this podcast next year. And we'll be bringing in, let's try to bring in some more consultants who are working on these races to kind of talk about some of their approaches. I know you'll be engaged in a lot of them. I'll be engaged in a lot of Latino efforts. My phone's been blowing up here on the California side and some national work. I'll be doing some work in Arizona and Nevada over the course of the next 60, 90 days, just trying to assess what a lot of this change and this transformation means from a polling and research standpoint. But man, this is, timing couldn't have been better to start having these discussions and providing a place for it, Chuck. I think that we're on the cusp of something really profound in this country that's exciting. I think that there's absolutely a lot of common through lines here with the Latino vote. My ears perked up when I heard Susan Collins, because I remember ripping the bark off of her in 2020. She's already up for election in Maine again. These senators, you think they've got this long stretch, but 6 years goes by really, really quickly. I don't know if she runs again. And I really think that Maine is such a unique state, and Susan Collins is kind of an icon there. She weathered a pretty big storm and a huge battering in 2020. I don't know who steps up to replace her, but she's getting on. She's getting along up there, and we're going to see how she votes on some of these confirmations.
And Murkowski in Alaska, they were elected in the same year.
They were elected in the same year, and Murkowski is much more of a fiery independent. Doesn't give a whatever.
A rat's ass.
A rat's ass. Thank you. Found me a good gentleman Texas way to finish that sentence. I think she's not afraid to take on her party. I value that, of course, as you know. And I just we're on the cusp of something really, really significant here. We'll probably have to go on the road quite a bit, Chuck, is what I'm thinking for the show.
I'm thinking Alaska. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Get some fishing in.
Hell yeah.
And fish. We'll do an episode that can take me out and show me how to fish a little bit.
Done. And y'all should know, for Susan Murkowski, she is like an old school gangster. Let me tell you why I like her as a Republican, is that they ran a Republican against her and beat her in the primary. And then she ran as a write-in candidate. Can you imagine having to spell Murkowski?
Lieberman did that in Connecticut.
And she won.
Yeah.
And she won. And she beat them as a write-in candidate. It was crazy.
Murkowski, the old school gangster Murkowski. I love that.
Absolutely. And then you have an open governor's race going to happen in New Mexico.
You be involved in that one?
Yeah, I'm going to be involved in the Mexico governor's race. We've already been hired. I'll talk about that after the new year, but there's going to be a lot of great people running there. Maybe somebody from this administration, maybe other people running, but you got to remember also that there's 3 Democratic congressmen in New Mexico. 3. And you also have to remember that Heinrich the sitting U.S. senator is up in New Mexico. So does Heinrich decide he wants to be the governor and then give up a Senate seat where somebody would have to run in the Senate seat? So there's going to be a lot of moving parts in New Mexico.
As we're talking about New Mexico, there's something people haven't really talked about. Do you remember that swing that Trump went on from the Coachella Valley in Southern California through New Mexico? And everyone's like, he's on crack. What the hell is he doing? This campaign's incompetent. And I was saying, watch Coachella, man. Watch that vote. It's going to move. That's where the Imperial County is. That's that same neck of the woods. That's where that huge rightward shift happened. New Mexico did the same thing, right? It's like they were seeing something because they were polling accurately.
Spell Coachella.
Coachella, Coachella.
Okay.
I'm gonna tip Mike Madrid on that stuff. I'll be stealing my stuff and tweet.
I'm not. I'm looking up. There was a guy that had put up the performance over the last 4 years, and I wanted to pull it up and show it to you because it was fascinating.
Yeah, and so look, this is there. This gets down to we're probably not going to cover this. Maybe we should, but the polling of Latinos is far better and far more accurate amongst Republicans. Way better. Way better. They've been looking at this stuff. They've been publicly calling this stuff. They did it in 16. They did it in 20. They did it in 2022. They did it in 2024. And the receipts are there. The Republicans have been saying where they were going to get, and they're getting there. Their polling of Latinos is way, way better. So, there've been some stories written. We can kind of gloss over that stuff. I don't want to cause any more consternation for folks that it's already been concerned. People know where the problems are. The question is, do they have the political will to make the changes to get out of to stop the problems that they've been fooled into heading down? But
I couldn't find it. I can get it. I'll tweet it out or something. But it was amazing. Oh, I know where I put it. You know what I did is I texted that to the congressman, because I saw it and I sent it to him, and it was a tweet. Oh, here it is right here. Boom, right at my fingertips. So this is the congressional district. So this is not just Coachella. This is the whole CD of the 25th, which is represented by an amazing, good, middle-of-the-road, common-sense Democrat named Dr. Raul Ruiz. A really good dude, like from the community. Went to Harvard and went back to the Coachella Valley and opened up clinics to help poor people with medicine. So that
emergency room doctor.
Exactly. So in 2008, this district was +9 Obama. 12, it was +12 Obama. It was +17 for Clinton, +15 for Biden. And for Harris, it was +2.5.
There you go.
For Shift, it was 1.5 for Shift.
Yeah, send me that. Look, and I'm going to be doing some analysis too on how these down ticket races. We talked about this on a previous episode, but it does tell us whether or not this is a Trump phenomenon. I don't believe it is. I've said that. I wrote it in the book. This isn't about Trump.
And the congressman, I should mention, the congressman won there by double digits. Like, the people love him there.
Yeah.
And he overperforms the top of the ticket by double digits. They know Raul Ruiz. They love Raul Ruiz.
And so this is what's happening is in places like that, these strong Democratic districts, the Democrat is winning down ticket, but Trump is making bigger gains. And by the way, California broadly, Steve Garvey outperformed Donald Trump. So what is that telling us?
Baseball fans?
Well, it's not just Steve Garvey, right? It's like everywhere except for exceptions like Ruben Gallego, right, who dramatically overperforms running against Kerry Lake. Trump overperforms Kerry Lake, but
there's a lot of Trump Gallego voters too.
Precisely. So this split ticket stuff is something you've got to look at because it's telling us something. And my point is, we saw this type of ticket splitting. The last time we saw it on this size was between 1970 and 1994, when Southern Democrats, they were Democrats from their identity. 100 years were Democrats at the end of the Civil War, voting Republican. They would vote more and more Republican, but they were Democrats. When you see voters, voting behavior changes before voting registration does. It's really important to understand. Let me say that again for everybody. Voting behavior changes before voter registration does, always in a realignment. And I'm not suggesting there's a realignment. I think it's too early to suggest that, but this voting behavior is happening. We are seeing Latino Democrats voting more Republican. The Raul Ruiz district makes perfect sense. This is exactly what Southern Democrats were doing. The top of the ticket, they'd vote for Nixon for president. They'd vote for Reagan for president. Then they'd vote down ticket. They'd vote for, more conservative Democrats. Until 1994, when the whole thing realigned and snaps and finally breaks, but takes a generation to get there. That's my argument. Is that's the era that we're heading into right now? Is the Democrat? We're not seeing changes in Latino voter registration, by the way, not virtually anywhere. When you start to see that, that's a realignment. Right now, what you're seeing is different voting behavior. This poll that I just told you about with California Latinos, there's nobody saying we're going to vote more for Republicans. Nobody in that poll was saying that. Nobody has changed their voter registrations. But all of the issues that they're voting for are much more Republican. That's how this begins. So there can be adjustments made, but if they're not, you're heading towards a long-term realignment of these coalitions. And I'm arguing that's the moment that we're at, and it's completely open as to which party steps into the void here and fills it.
I think that's exactly right. And I think we'll have a lot of time to talk about that as we get into the new year. We're going to break this down state by state. We'll talk about race by race, but I wanted to end the last nerd podcast for the year. Again, we'll be back next week with our Christmas/holiday/Kwanzaa/ all things celebratory for our Jewish brothers and sisters and all the others. All holiday season for everybody next week when we're bringing our 3 best and the worst of the year. And we'll talk more about like what's the vision, what's the things that make us all feel good. Because I do think that what we've talked about today is what you want to hear from us, which is what does the numbers really mean? What's the influence that Latino voters are going to have? And that's why I wanted to, when I saw some of these numbers start piling up, I was like, this is just different. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Again, reminding you what Mike said before, help us name our award for next week. What are we going to call and it can't be the old Mexican award. It can't be the whatever award. It can't be the Chupacabra. Oh, I like the Chupacabra. Maybe they make that for the worst award, make it the Chupacabra award. But anyway, let me know what you think about it. What are your ideas? Tell us what you think we should call it. And if you have some real best of the worst ideas, don't forget to like us. Don't forget to follow us. Don't forget to tune in next week when we'll have our season ending. Don't forget to make your holiday presents. And if you're buying me a shirt, I'll wear a large, and you can send it right over to the Latino Vote if you're buying me a gift. Mike wears an extra small because he likes those tight T-shirts where the girls will look at his arms. But Mike Madrid, you have a great week and talk to you later. Be good, everybody.
Don't forget to call your mom. Don't forget to call your mom.
Oh, yeah. Call your mom.